Mark Johnson grew up in an environment of heavy drinking and violence, and a teenage drunk, drug abuser and a criminal. He was jailed for violent crime at just 17 years old. In his 20s, drugs became his life, and by 28 he was living on the streets of London's West End, homeless, emaciated and addicted to crack and heroin. Facing a choice between death and rehabilitation, he chose the harder option. And after primary, secondary and tertiary rehab, he started a tree surgery business with help from the Prince's Trust. His policy was to employ other recovering addicts and ex-offenders. And he won, amongst other accolades, a Pride Britain Award for his work. And also, he has a best-selling autobiography called Wasted, published in 2007. And Mark is now a policy advisor to the Prince's Trust, the government and the third sector. And he's also started a charity called User Voice, which offers policymakers access to the unheard and marginalised voices in society. It is with fantastic pleasure that I introduce Mark to speak to you today. Mark.
Cheers. Hi everyone, it's great to be here. I was really nervous. I've spoke nationally and internationally thousands of times, and today I was particularly nervous, and I sort of question why, and it really comes down to I've got an opportunity to speak to some of my own people. Do you know what I mean? People who've sort of trodden the same path that I have, and that now living successfully and also giving back such a tremendous amount to other people that were like them, and I it's very special. And a conference like this, I'm not sure whether anything that I could say. Well, I hope there's one thing that I can say that can reach somebody through my own story, and that's what I'll stick to, my story. I have many opinions that you can read about in The Guardian or somewhere. But it's such a controversial subject as well, addiction and recovery from addiction. You've got the people that do the 12-step program. You've got the sort of industry which treats people before they're ready for any kind of rehabilitation. You've got people who don't use Class A's and drink, and you've got such this mixture of things. And I think one thing that always frustrates me is, why do we look for the golden answer? Do you know what I mean? Where there's a million different answers, and really the only answer that matters is the one for yourself, the one that if you live life and have a quality of life, that should be enough, So yeah, who am I? Author of that book called Wasted. Some of you might have read it. I know I've got some friends in the audience as well. We've met on our travels, James, and I can't remember your name in Liverpool, but I'm sure we know a lot of the same people, the ex-users and stuff. So author of that book called Wasted. I'm a Guardian columnist. I've wrote for The Guardian for about 3 years. And I'm an Ashoka Fellow, which is an entrepreneur sort of type organisation that's in the world. I think there's about 3,000 in the world and about 7 in this country. And I am a visiting associate of Durham University on the psychology in the psychology department. And I can actually say it. I'm on the board of London Probation Service. And what's particularly good about that one is I didn't want to take it, but I have. Because I was a first ex-offender on the board of offender management when it first came out, when NOMS, probation and prison changed into NOMS. I was the first ex-offender on that board, and I call it the boring board. It was horrible. And I'm sure some ex-service users here know what I'm talking about when you get subjected to the boring paperwork and procedures of organisations, not the best place, a fitting place, for us. But this one's particularly quite exciting for me, because it had to go to Ken Clark, for him to pass it, and now I'm a equal member of London Probation Board, not an advisor, not somebody who's out on the peripheral edge or anything. I'm a board member, which is very important. So, and hopefully all I do is just open the door for many others to come, especially in London. So I'm going to start. Dysfunctional upbringing, like many people, hopefully you'll relate to. Dysfunctional upbringing, violent, alcoholic father, deeply religious, stroke mentally unstable mother. The home life was volatile, to say the least. Yeah, you didn't know where it was coming from, who off, or, you know. And I remember wanting to be the other side of the front door rather than in it, you know, more often than not. And, you know, it's a pretty sort of well-spoken about story, you know, older peer group, introduction to drink. I was 8 years old. At the same time, I was under psychiatry for being violent, and my forte was hitting people in the face, you know, and children practice what they learn. Do you know what I mean? You got a problem in my house, you know what I mean? You box somebody up, you know, not discuss it in a warm, love and supportive environment. Had my first drink, and what that was about for me, and I've reflected on it. I've been 11 and a half years clean and sober now, which is a miracle, you know what I mean? But like many of you, you know, we do it together. For me, it was 5 bottles of Strongbow cider, and it was late 70s with a group of like skinheads and punks halfway down the street in this schoolyard. And I remember like spitting, swearing and smoking, you know, sat on the wall, loads of gob like on the floor and everything, you know what I mean? And I remember drinking these, and my memory didn't come back. Probably about 6 years into recovery, I remembered what it was. And for me, it was a first reference point, yeah? And I always talk about reference points. You don't change how you feel by discussing your feelings in a warm, love and supportive environment, yeah? You can change how you feel like that by going like that, yeah? And so that's reference point number 1. And that was my entry into this relationship with chemicals, you know what I mean? And changing how I felt and navigating through life with, you know, what I can get hold of and what's going to make me feel what, and, you know. I remember 11, I ran away from home. I tried heroin for the first time. I remember having 3 inhalations of this foil, it was like I felt insulated. And I remember I stole this girl's stereo from school, as you do when you're a dysfunctional kid. And she rang the police. The police were waiting for her at home, so I ran away. Well, not the first time. And I remember spending on this itchy grey blanket in the front room, being sick. And reference point number 2, you know, you change how you feel by using chemicals, not talking honestly and openly with people who care about you. And that was it. I was locked into it. And I had aspirations as a kid, you know, and I wanted to be an artist. I was very good at graffiti. And at 16, I got into art college based on this portfolio of work. And I moved, I think, 200 miles away from home. My dad moved to, 200 miles away from this area and to this remote farmhouse. But he was abusing my little sister and, you know, and all sorts of weird and wonderful things went on in my family. And so I got into this art college, not too far from here, and trying to grasp this aspiration of like becoming the person I wanted to be, you know what I mean? I wanted to be an artist, you know, but really I wanted to just get out, you know, from the sort of the war that was going on in my house. And so I went to this art college with all the other boys and girls going to, you know, classes, and they're going home with a warm meal and the love and support of their parents. I'm going to a bed sit on £20 a week with a court order, 20 or 30. Because I was young, they let me sign on income support. And I remember, you know, there was a court order against my dad for coming near me because he was so violent, yeah? So I was literally on me on this bed sit and da-da-da. And I think when you've had so much rejection as a child, you develop a form of behaviour, which some of you all know, called self-sabotage. Yeah? I know rejection is inevitable, right? as a child, always. The love of my parents was never, you know, I was always rejected from that and stuff. And so you get this form of behaviour, self-sabotage, that you reject somebody before the inevitable is going to happen, they reject you. It's easier. It's easier to be seen as a bad boy than it is a needy boy. Yeah? And this is providing some answers for some of the youth that are out there today. And so, I'm failing at art college. Yeah, I couldn't sustain it. I didn't have the support, and I realise that now at 40 years old. And so what I'd done was, instead of saying, you know, I need help and da-da-da, because I didn't know how to ask for it, I stole every single power tool out the art college, sold it to the nearest building site, and relapsed, you know, and took the hand of friendship of the kids I grew up with, who were all drinking, taking drugs and committing crime. And that's when I ended up in Borstal, the year it changed over from Borstal to young offenders. And I say about that prison experience, if there was any innocence before I went in, it was swiftly removed whilst I was in there. Yeah, the regime, some of you might remember that one, with the red tie and the two shoes without the left and right, just two rectangles. The buffers underneath your feet, because if you walk on your cell floor and you get scratched, you get nicked. Or if they lick their fingers and climb underneath the doors or the window frames and find dust, you get nicked, and 3 nickings, you get sent down the block. And down there, nobody wants to go, you know, but I went, which was a cage inside a cage. Somebody stole some sandwiches out the kitchen. There was 10 of us, got done for rioting, actually. And the person that had only been down there before swallowed a razor blade, and because he'd been down there before. And I remember landing in front of 6 officers. They pulled my shirt over my head and left the cuffs on, and pulled my pants and short down to my ankles, and was giving me a good idea and saying, you know, take your clothes off. Well, you can't take your clothes off if they've, you know, it was just a mind game. Cardboard table, cardboard chair, and like a cage on this side of the wall, and a potty, no toilet paper, nothing, and pretty heavy. And I thought, how can other people do this to other people? And what happened was we got done for a gang fight, 6 of us. We got 9.5 years between us, and I'm in there thinking about my intention, yeah. And what I could never work out is my intention never matched my action. Very, you know, confused, morally confused, yeah. Stood in the court of law, you know, with a judge there sentencing you for a crime, and you're thinking, but that's not me. Do you know what I mean? That's not me. I don't understand that. And you're thinking, well, you know, the law's designed for people that, you know, it says you commit a crime out of the moral choice to do so. But for me, I would say that I was morally confused. And when you add a little bit of drink and drugs on top of that, you know, and whirl it around, you've just got chaos. And that's what was going on up here. And so I'd done this sentence. I met a probation officer and started to work with her. Didn't trust her, didn't tell the truth. And I was back in within 2 months on a robbery. Somebody got half his ear cut off and stuff like that. And I went back. Then I met a probation officer, and I went to my first treatment centre in 1988. Yeah, and I arrived there, and they said that addiction was a learnt behaviour, right? Get this, and that you could unlearn it, so you can go to school and stop being who you are. Do you know what I mean? And completely insane. I'm really glad that we know a little bit more about addiction now. We still don't know too much. Do you know what I mean? The phenomenon of addiction, you know, we try to and pretend we do and market ourselves to, but actually we know very little. And so went to this rehab, met this prostitute, as you do, and I was in prison for a long time, and they let you have girlfriends in this prison. This is how much they knew about addiction, you know, diverting your feelings off on anything that, you know, what was I supposed to be doing? You know, your girlfriend was my girlfriend the week after, and that sort of thing. You know, it was fantastic, you know. And I think I even slept with one of the counsellors there, actually, which is very wrong. You know, but I was very sick, you know, very sick and devious young man. So I met this prostitute and left with her. really. And I know recovery talk, it's taking hostage, you know. She took me and I took her as a hostage because I wanted to use, she wanted to use, but I didn't want to do it on my own and she didn't want to do it on her own. So we done it, you know, and I ended up on this council estate in Birmingham, Winson Green near Handsworth. And remember carrying this hammer. I know actually one of the workers know who I'm talking about because I just spoke to him before, which is quite bizarre. But and she's in recovery now, thank God. But walking around this bedroom with this hammer and waiting for the punters to go, and if they didn't go, I'd take the hammer down, you know what I mean, occasionally. And thinking, my life can't get any worse than this. This is a rock bottom. But it wasn't my first rock bottom. My first one, I would say, was going up that bus on Portland Bill, that first introduction to Borstal. And I thought, life can't get any worse than this. And in my book, I call it, I thought it was a rock bottom, but I realised it was a ledge in the ocean. Yeah? And there's another one. Yeah? And then there's another. Just when you think it can't get any worse, guess what? It does. Yeah? And I'm on this council estate with this prostitute girlfriend and with all of these punters around, and in this situation with crack and heroin, and, you know, it was really messy, and thinking it can't get any worse than this. Her sister got murdered. She was a twin sister. Her sister got murdered. We had to move out of Birmingham. We went up north of Lancaster, and arrived at my mum's doorstep. Lost my mum her job. Stole out the house. It was just absolutely catastrophic for my family. And then we disappeared down to Manchester every month when she got paid, you know, and then start binging and stuff. And I think by this time I'd been through every cycle of addiction that's possible, yeah? So you've had your chaotic lifestyle, robbing, cheating, lying, stealing off your family and all that. You've rinsed that one. Then you're committing crime to do it, yeah? I've rinsed that one, and it has all of these sort of consequences attached to it. And then I tried something that I'd never tried before, and I thought, what do people do that live life successfully? Because I'm looking at from my inside, looking out, what's the knack of life? Successful living, what is it? Because I don't understand it. And from my own education at the time, it was, well, people have jobs, they live in a house, and their lives seem to be like this. Whereas mine was like, you know, crashing from one sort of episode to the other. And so I thought, right, I know, I'm going to get a job. Yeah, 27, I think I was 27. I think I'm quite proud of that actually now, but they're 27 years old, and some of these guys I knew become tree surgeons. And that was sort of after I'd done geographicals around America and stuff with this sound system and etc. And they got they'd run this tree surgery firm. So I got this job. I had the most understanding employer, and I didn't use when I got this job for a month until he paid me. Yeah, and then I'm back on that cycle. And some of you will know of using to work and working to use, and it's empty and it's grey. What a grey, depressing world. And actually, I'd never worked out how you go for one job, but you end up with two. Yeah, when your day job finishes, you're back on this treadmill of finding drugs so you don't wake up sick the next day. And then you go to work and you're just working to use them, you know, like this. I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, have a hit, make another needle up, push a matchstick down the barrel, put that in my lunchbox. No lunch because I couldn't afford that. I used to rob that at the shop at lunchtime and go to work. And I used to work with guys that have got 2 houses, 2 holidays a year in Spain, nice cars, and I'm stealing my lunch out the shop. I couldn't work it out up here, how my best efforts are getting me further and further away than any kind of successful living. Yeah? Very, very confused about that one. And because I couldn't put it together. And so got this job, finding myself 100 foot up a tree, off my head, not knowing how I got up there. And that was it. And then things would start to go missing from this firm, as they always did when I was around. And I'd have to do one, you know. And so I went to Ireland, thinking I'm going to get clean in Ireland, and ended up on Ballymun estate in Ireland. Anybody knows that? knows what I'm talking about. With 16 addicts on the truck that I stole off my employer, driving around Ballymun Estate looking for heroin. That you're lucky if it gives you a headache because it's so crap. But and so I tried this for a bit. Cut a long story short, I ended up in London, and I went to Silvertown Way in Canning Town, and I lived in this caravan with these huge smelly dogs in this tree surgery compound, and I thought that I was the best climber and arboriculturalist ever to be on the planet, you know, because we're deluded addicts, aren't we? You know, we're full of delusion. And the employer turned around to me, he said, "Mark, can I have a word?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're fired." And I was devastated, genuinely broken-hearted, do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, what? I thought he was going to give me a promotion. You know what I mean? And I'm sat on the wall and there's tears and everything, you know, because I'm absolutely devastated. Because I'd arrived at a point in my life that when I looked back, I'd robbed, stole, lied, cheated off anybody that had ever come near me. And I never intended to. That was the confusing bit, yeah? My actions were never my intentions. And he said, "You're fired." And at that point, I didn't have anywhere else to go. I'd, you know, robbed, stolen, lied off these people. I remember having a mobile phone, and I thought, where can I go to reinvent myself? Yeah, to arrive and say, yeah, I've been to this, you know, exotic place around the world, and, you know, and see how long that lasts. And there was nobody. Nobody wanted to know Mark Johnson, you know. And we talk about a rock bottom. That's it. Or so I thought. I threw the phone over the wall when I walked out of Canning Town, yeah, because I was so depressed and probably, you know, rattling and stuff as well. And I went into the West End of London, and I'd been there to school before. And West End of London is very different to it then than it is now. The year after I moved, they had a big clean-up campaign where they just literally took through about 300, 500 addicts in either treatment or hostels and stuff. But actually then, they were all on the street. And I went down there, done my first night in a shop doorway down the Haymarket with a guy called Dave, who's dead now, and his dog called Boots, who's in the middle, and it's in the book. And he introduced me to the street, and I landed with all the other boys and girls that I'd had this complete sort of connection with. They were lost. And that's where I stayed. I, you know, robbed, stole, lied every single day. I ate out of dustbins, I slept behind bins, rat-infested bins, you name it, I'd done it. And the name of the game was I swapped the sort of pain of sort of daily life, the existence that I had, for the pain of just waking up sick for that half an hour until somebody brings me in. Do you know what I mean? That's where my mind had got to, and this relationship with chemicals had got to. And I just thought, I'm going to go for that. That seems a good idea for me because the sort of alternative seems too hard. And so I had a square mile, Soho, up to Oxford Street and round. Even when I come off the street, even my shoes were worn on one side, you know, where I just walked around every day, all night, every day. And I didn't sleep. I used to collapse, you know, after 3 days and be exhausted, and then wake up star-shaped on Oxford Street and find £3 and a bag of sandwiches, which I thought was a result at the time. And then back to it again. And I lived like that for a while, and something happened. It stopped working. The only reason that I'm here is because it stopped working. If it had continued to work for me, you're right, that experience with drugs, I would not be here, I'll guarantee you. Yeah, because I would have took those odds a long time ago to continue. And but it stopped working. And what I mean by that is the original, you know, action that I took when I was a kid and found the relationship with drugs no longer done it for me. Yeah. And I had to look for another solution. I wouldn't have called it that at the time, but I didn't know what to do. Yeah, and I'm talking about banging up with people with AIDS. Actually, Gobby Gall. I don't know if anybody, he's dead now anyway, but so I can talk about him. And banging up with people like that, with Hep C and the Coke can in the doorway in Oxford Street. You know, real sort of at the end of the road. And I remember having a hit, and it's still having the mental anguish that as if I didn't have it. And I met this guy called Sean Evans, who's a guardian angel, a gay camp guardian angel. Who said, I'm not having this. And the community action worker that trail around the streets. I don't know if there's any of you guys here that do that, but it's absolutely a marvellous job, much needed as well. And he said, I'm not watching you. He said, Mark Johnson, I'd used with him 10 years before, and he'd become a social worker. And this is this virtuous circle with addicts, yeah, of one helping the other and getting into services and having this absolute profound effect and developing a very an honest, no barriered relationship with people. And he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm lost, I've had it. And he said, I'm not having it. He said, you'll come with me. And he grabbed me by the arm and he carried me. And at that point, I was 7.5 stone, covered in body lice, the size of your fingernails. The socks had grown through, the scabs had grown through the socks of my feet. I couldn't walk. I've got the scars today. And he took me off, to this, it was a rolling shelter at the time, and actually threw me into detox. And in this detox, I'm 4 days on methadone, doing an 8-day or 10-day detox, whatever it was. And this kid coming off the street, and we were arguing over a TV channel. And I thought, don't know where I got this from, he was going to put the ashtray on my head. So I jumped up, latched onto him and bit his forehead. Yeah, I'm 7.5 stone, I mean, and he ran out and said to the staff, he's done it. They come running in. And I said, what do you mean? I never done anything. And they said, Mark, have you seen his head? And I only had one tooth. And he's got one tooth in prison. I think it's called bang to rights. They said it was you. And the other thing I didn't know, that she was a recovering addict herself. And I said what I'd always said, blame. Yeah, I was a victim. Probation, police, family members, school, they all said that Mark Johnson was a victim of his environment. Now, victims are passive, yeah? Victims can't do anything about their situation, yeah? So I'd lived with this belief for 29 years that I was a victim. So why would I look at myself for a solution, yeah? So I said to this woman, looked her right in the eyes, saying, you're going to send me out to the streets tonight. I hope you can sleep with yourself. How can you do this job knowing that you're going to send me to my death? I'm going to die. I hope I haunt you. You know what I mean? All this, this sort of manipulation that addicts give. And she looked in my eyes and she said, no, Mark, you're killing yourself. And somebody had said it before maybe, but I'd never heard it. And she said, you're doing this to yourself. And I said, she kicked me out. 30 days I got kicked out, halfway through a methadone detox, and with this thing ringing in my head that I'm doing it to myself. And I walked into the street, I walked back to this rolling shelter, and this woman, another recovering addict, yeah, plays a huge part in my life to help me to change. She said, here's £2, there's a bus down the road to Brixton and go to a recovery meeting that's in Brixton, right? So I thought, I can do it, and it's like carrying the world on your shoulders, halfway through a detox when you're in that sort of state. And I got down to the bus, went to step on the bus, and there's £20 on the floor. I didn't make it to the recovery meeting. That's junky luck, man. You know what I mean? You never find that when you want it, but you always find it when you don't need it. Anyway, got into recovery eventually, went back, I was like a little baby, got into the detox. I used again, yeah. My life is, getting clean was a succession of failures for me. Do you know what I mean? Very important. In government policy, we penalise this failure because we don't see it for what it is, and those failure is part of recovery. And I failed a lot, and luckily for me, this Sean Evans didn't give up on me. He broke the rules. The protocol was he disengage with me and go and give it to somebody who wants it. But I told him the truth and he responded to that and he put his job on the line, and I'm alive as a result of that. That is why I'm here today. Went to treatment. They sent me to Bognor Regis. The only thing you can do in Bognor Regis is die of old age or get clean. I remember landing there at 7.5 stone with an ice cream, it was horrible. But I learned to live. I've done 1 year of residential drug treatment. Now that's quite a lot, you know, for the 3-month cycle of, you know, losing your funding and stuff. I've got one year of it, which I'm very, very grateful for, and I've also paid back as well. I think it cost Westminster Council about 20 grand. And when I look back at the financial thing that I paid back, but also when I look back of what I've done as a result of people helping me, then it's priceless. And so I've done 1 year's residential, absolutely petrified of living life clean and sober, absolutely petrified. And went to Bournemouth and went to the Prince's Trust, went for a grant, wrote this elaborate business plan. It was all lies. I just wanted a deposit for a flat. Yeah, I didn't intend to start a business plan, I could be really honest. Addicts don't get honest overnight, you know what I mean? And they give me £3,000, a junkie £3,000 with no social security record, nothing. And so I got this grant, met a girl, because your body comes back, you go on the beach for a bit of sunbathing and stuff, and I met this girl. And she said to me, and I was doing cash in hand work as well, you know, you don't get honest, but, she said to me, oh, what do you do? I said, oh, I'm a tree surgeon. And because I thought that was the best thing, you know what I mean, to say. And she said, no, you don't, you work cash in hand on that building site up the road. And she said, listen, mate, she said, I don't want to be with somebody, yeah, who doesn't want anything for their lives. I don't want to be with somebody who's, you know, who's just like a loser. And it rang in my head, and I thought, what? I was earning £400 on average per day in the West End, yeah? And I couldn't understand why people stepping over me in suits, and I'm on more money than they are, but yet I'm getting further and further away from any kind of successful living. This moral confusion, I couldn't work it out. And I thought, hold on a minute, I'm not stupid, do you know what I mean? And she was really the sort of engineer behind that dropped that seed in my mind of putting who I was as an addict, an entrepreneurial, driven, talented individual, yeah, into business, yeah. And so I started this tree surgery business. In the small print, I said I'd employ people in recovery and young offenders, which was a bloody nightmare. But but I'd done it, yeah, I'd done it, and it was successful. And I'll tell you why it's successful. It was successful on financial grounds, not on any grants or anything like that. As a business, yeah, I've taken a group of people that people have written off and putting them into a work environment, and it's succeeding just on the contractual income, and it done it, yeah. I won't tell you about the interesting sort of experiences of prolific offenders being on stately homes and the silverware goes missing. Or a little old lady coming up to me and saying, Mark, have you seen my dihydrocodone tablets that are... and some kid quivering in the leaves, like, you know what I mean, like, off his head. Or actually, with a group of 25, you know, recovering addicts and young offenders with the resentments towards each other, wielding chainsaws. That's the most interesting one. But it was successful. So 4 years on, probably employed about 200 people went through the books, yeah, in recovery and young offenders, and it was a brilliant way to put people who've got something to give back together with people who need help, yeah, and that's what it was, a therapeutic work-based environment. People had a problem, tools go down, we sort it out and we move on, yeah, as a group and stuff. But so I ended up 6 wagons, all the machines on the back of it, lads going out in and out every day, and I started to win awards for it. I won the first a business award for it. Then I won the Daily Mirror's Pride of Britain award, and then I got this opportunity. The Prince of Wales asked me to go and see him, as you do, and so I did. I started to hang out, and I probably have contact maybe 2 times a year now. You know, we'd let us all go for tea. But it's bizarre. But my life is actually more bizarre now than it ever was before, you know what I mean? And find yourself in some weird situations, like in South Africa, speaking with the ambassadors from around the world, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't comprehend.